10, the SSL Pharaoh. 15,000 feet below the surface of the Bermuda Triangle sits the SSL Pharaoh, a 790-foot-long cargo ship. The story is tragic, but the mystery of where its crew ended up remains a mystery to this day. Did they succumb to the elements or something else? In September 2015, the Pharaoh was set to pass right through the Bermuda Triangle while traveling from Florida to Puerto Rico. The ship was carrying 33 people in total. A tropical storm was brewing, but it was hundreds of miles away from the actual ship's route, and the cargo ship was built to withstand this kind of weather, even if it did. But Mother Nature had other plans, and the storm transformed into a Category 3 hurricane with waves 40 feet high. The last message received from the ship said that the engine failed along with the power and that the entire ship had tilted on its side, but the crew had managed to contain the flooding and that things were for the most part under control. But that was the last message they received until a few weeks later when the El Pharaoh was found sitting upright in Davy Jones' locker. Debris was everywhere, but there wasn't a single sign of the crew, their bodies nowhere to be seen. Number 9, the USS Cyclops. It's such a shame this ship had to go down carrying such an epic name. It was World War I, and Lieutenant G.W. Worley was sent on the dangerous task of carrying coal to Brazil to refuel Allied ships. With 309 people on board, the ship did reach Barbados in March, but after that, nothing. The USS Cyclops was never heard from again. The Navy's official statement reads, "The disappearance of this ship has been one of the most baffling mysteries in the annals of the Navy, all attempts to locate her having proved unsuccessful." There were no enemy submarines in the Western Atlantic at that time, and in December 1918, every effort was made to obtain from German sources information regarding the disappearance of this vessel. How do 309 people in a massive ship go missing without a trace? One secret the Bermuda Triangle aims to keep. Number 8, Flight 19. The year 1945. On December 5th, 5 Avenger torpedo bombs, I know I got excited too, but unfortunately unrelated to Marvel, under the command of Lieutenant Charles Taylor from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, set out with 13 student pilots. Guess what happened? They disappeared. But it got super weird before they did. About an hour and a half into the flight, Taylor radioed that something was going wrong with their compasses, that they weren't working. He thought they were over the Florida Keys and so was told to head north, but Taylor got confused and the team kept heading out to sea. Night fell, and before long all communication with the 13 petered out and the entire crew disappeared without a trace. To this day, the planes have never been recovered and remained trapped beneath the waves of the Bermuda Triangle. Number 7, Piper Navajo. The temperatures were ideal. The sky was clear, it was warm, there really shouldn't have been a problem, but for Irving Rivers, the secret of what happened to him that day will remain with him wherever he is. On November 3rd, 1978, Rivers left St. Croix, one of the US Virgin Islands, in his plane called the Piper Navajo. He was piloting for Eastern Caribbean Airways and was an extremely experienced pilot. While making a solo flight to pick up passengers, the control tower operator told him to avoid a spot of showers, and Rivers made the adjustment. This is where it gets weird. The controller saw the lights of his plane and cleared him for landing, like he saw them glowing in the sky. But soon after another plane departed, Rivers' lights completely disappeared. The red and green lights he saw blinking before were nowhere in sight, and even stranger, his plane disappeared on the radar. An emergency search went out, but nothing. They found absolutely nothing. This dude's plane literally disappeared 1.6 kilometers from landing, and nothing, no trace, no debris, nothing was found. Number 6, the Witchcraft. I wouldn't be surprised if there was some kind of magic involved with the Bermuda Triangle, but Witchcraft was actually the name of the ship. On December 22nd, a 23-foot-long luxury yacht crewed by 2 gentlemen, Dan Barak and Father Patrick Horgan, went out to enjoy a dazzling Christmas view of Miami. But then a mile offshore, the yacht radioed that they'd hit something, but there didn't appear to be damage. They asked to be towed ashore anyway, and the Coast Guard set out immediately. It took them 20 minutes to reach the site, but when they got there was nothing. They knew that aboard the craft there were tons of flares, life vests, lifeboats, and distress signal devices, including a special design installed by Barak. He put an extra flotation device designed in such a way that even if the hull was ruptured, a part of the ship would still be able to float. But there was no sign that the ship had even been there. They searched 1,200 square miles, but still, nothing. Number 5, the mystery of the derelict. The Ellen Austin was a white oak schooner that was sailing from New York to London in 1881, but a discovery they made during their voyage stopped them in their tracks. A derelict ship was seen floating aimlessly near the Bermuda Triangle. Captain Baker, captain of the Ellen, waited 2 days before approaching it, just in case it was a trap. When he hopped aboard, he found no sign of any crew, though it was well packed and fully stocked. In order to tow it back, the captain placed a crew on the ship so they could sail it back together. But as they tried to do just that, a storm hit, separating them. After it cleared, Baker saw the ship drifting once again and chased it down. But just like how he'd found it, the ship was entirely crewless. Not a sign of the men he had placed on there was found. They abandoned the ship, fearing that whatever was on it was cursed. Number 4, the ghost ship of the Outer Banks. If you love that show, I know what you thought of. To earn a name like that, something crazy must have happened, and that it did. A massive schooner known as the Carroll A. Deering was discovered completely abandoned by the Coast Guard and has ghost story written all over it. While returning from Hampton Roads, Virginia, from Barbados on January 29, 1921, she passed the Cape Lookout lightship. The officer reported that the crew seemed disorganized and confused, but the crew reported that they had lost their anchors. The last time the ship would be seen was by another ship, the SS Lake Elon, who said the Deering looked like it was heading a weird direction. At 6:30 a.m. on January 31st, the ship was seen run aground on the shoals with the decks awash, sails set, lifeboats missing, and therefore seemingly abandoned. But all personal belongings were left behind, including navigational equipment, crucial papers, and there was indeed no anchor on the ship. The weirdest thing though was the food laid out as if someone was in the middle of preparing food. Rumors of rum running and even pirates surrounding the wreckage, but no one has ever solved the mystery of their disappearance. Number 3, Star Tiger. The Star Tiger was supposed to arrive at 5 a.m. in Bermuda, but as you can guess, that never happened. In fact, this would be the last flight it would ever take. Captain B.W. McMillan was flying with World War II hero Air Marshal Sir Arthur Conyngham on January 30th, 1948 from England to Bermuda. The Star Tiger was a British South American Airways Tudor 4 plane. Official records state that the aircraft's heater was unreliable and may have failed, or that the compass was at fault. But as for what actually happened, that must lie with whatever natural anomalies surrounded that area. McMillan decided to fly at around 2,000 feet, which is pretty low, but he was trying to avoid the strong wind due to the Gulf Stream in the area. The last time they reported their position was at 3:15 a.m. and they were on track to arrive at 5 a.m. but they never showed up. Now, flying so low meant they would have little room to maneuver and burn fuel faster, so perhaps it was due to natural events that something happened, but when it comes to the Bermuda Triangle, who can be sure? Number 2, the Star Ariel. Similar to the Star Tiger, the Star Ariel was another Tudor 4 model and a part of the British South American Airways. It was after this flight, however, that the model was discontinued. It left Heathrow Airport for the first time in 1946 with 7 crew members and 13 passengers en route to Jamaica. They were just going on holiday. People just looking for a good time. Captain J.C. McPhee reported in that things were going smoothly. So far so good. But then a cryptic message arrived where the captain said he was changing his frequency and then the sound cut out. Nothing was heard after that. When the craft didn't arrive, a search party was sent out, but not even a hint of debris or wreckage was ever found. With 2 of these aircraft disappearing in such a mysterious way, it's no wonder they got rid of the Tudor 4. With so much bad luck, clearly might have been cursed. Number 1, last but not least, the Tynemouth Electron. What can money, an aggressive PR assistant, and a boat buy you? Well, for Donald Crowhurst, he thought it would crown him a winner of the Sunday Times Golden Globe race, an event that required each contestant to sail around the world alone. Thing is, he was pretty new to sailing, but with a substantially large financial backer, Crowhurst had a lot riding on this adventure. He set sail from London on October 3rd, 1968, but almost turned back after his boat started having some problems. He decided to man a trimaran. Unfortunately, it was poorly built and the new improvements Crowhurst made fell apart like paper in water. But nevertheless, he kept calm and carried on, even reporting to his publicist that he was having a grand old time. Thing is, he never left the Atlantic. This is his route compared to the others. On his return, he feared that his deceptions would be revealed, so he jumped ship. His ship, the Electron, was abandoned in the Bermuda Triangle in July 1969, and many suspect that the unusual energy of the area is what drew the man to madness.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have Mont Blanc and Emo. Halifax is a port city that is located here in Canada in the province of Nova Scotia. Halifax was a super important place during the First World War, as it acted as a hot spot for ships that were carrying supplies, troops, ammunition, war stuff. On December 6, 1917, a Norwegian ship called Emo left Halifax, and it ended up colliding with a French ship called the Mont Blanc. This is already disastrous, but what made it significantly worse was the fact that the Mont Blanc held explosives. Because of the collision, the Mont Blanc was pushed towards the shore and ended up setting the harbor front ablaze. Just a few minutes later, the entire ship exploded with a blast so strong that windows 50 miles away were shattered. Unfortunately, there were many people at the waterfront when the explosion happened, which led to a total of 1,800 people dying in this incident. 9,000 people were injured, and it is said that 1,600 homes were destroyed in the blast. The force of this blast really cannot be understated. It was so powerful that it caused a tidal wave and violent tremors, which uprooted trees from the ground, damaged railroad tracks, and destroyed numerous buildings whose debris was scattered hundreds of yards away. In the end, this is what made this explosion one of the most violent non-nuclear explosions in history, and what makes it likely the world's largest accidental man-made explosion. In our number 9 spot today, we have the MV Goya. This ship was built in Norway in 1940, and it was meant to be a freighter, but in a World War II world. This ship ended up being used as a passenger ship in order to evacuate citizens as a part of Operation Hannibal. This, of course, as anybody could reasonably imagine, meant that the ship was very often overcrowded as they were trying to rescue as many people as possible at the time. On April 16, 1945, the ship was carrying over 7,000 passengers, which is 5 times the amount of people it could safely carry, when it was hit by a torpedo that was sent from a Soviet submarine just before midnight. The force of the explosion was so great that the ship only took minutes to sink, and since the timing of the incident had most passengers in their beds, you can imagine the outcome. Because of the lack of proper record keeping, and with the absolute panic of trying to rescue people with the imminent threat of attack, it isn't quite clear exactly how many people lost their lives in this wreck, but it is thought that somewhere between 6,000 to 7,000 passed away, which is unbelievable. It is thought that there were around 180 survivors of the wreck, and due to the unbelievable tragedy, the location of the wreck has been officially declared a war grave by Polish authorities. In our number 8 spot today, we have the SS Cap Arcona. This ship was a German luxury ocean liner that was launched in 1927, but by the time the mid-1940s rolled around, this one was put to use to help the country's war efforts. This time, this ship was converted into a prison ship. On April of 1945, with the advance of the British Army, prisoners being held at concentration camps were being loaded onto ships, and the Cap Arcona was one of them. On May 3, 1945, with more than 6,000 people on board, the ship was attacked by the British Air Force. The prisoners on board were being held below deck at the time, and the ship was not marked with any sort of red cross, so unfortunately those in the British Air Force did not realize that the ship was filled with prisoners at the time. The ship capsized but did not sink entirely, but still this wreck caused somewhere around 5,000 deaths. In our number 7 spot today, we have the MV La Julia. This was a ship that was owned by the Senegalese government, and despite the fact that it was designed to carry a maximum of 580 passengers, on September 26, 2002, this ship had at least 2,000 people on board. This is obviously a huge issue, and this coupled with the fact that there was a large amount of people who were sleeping on the ship's deck, which of course is above the center of buoyancy, only made matters worse. The ship was en route to the Senegalese capital of Dakar, and as it sailed farther out to sea than it was licensed to sail, it ended up encountering a storm and really rough waters. The ship ended up capsizing, and out of the 2,000 on board, only 64 people survived the entire ordeal. Not only was this because of the fact that the ship sank exceptionally quickly, but it's mostly because rescue was not sent out until several hours after the entire ordeal. This wreck is thought to be one of the worst non-military disasters in all of maritime history. Despite the severity of the situation, no one has been charged or prosecuted for this disaster to this day. In our number 6 spot today, we have the RMS Lancastria. This ship was a British ocean liner, but in April of 1940 she was reconstructed to be a troop ship under the command of Captain Rudolph Sharp. He sent the ship off to help aid in the evacuation of British troops and citizens from France, and on June 14, 1940 the ship departed from Liverpool. On June 16th, the ship anchored near the town of Saint Nazaire, and the following day somewhere between 4,000 and 9,000 refugees loaded on board. This included civilians, soldiers, and other military officials. While carrying all of these people, around 4 p.m. on June 17th, the German Junkers Ju-88 bombed the ship, which caused it to capsize and sink in an extremely fast 20 minutes. This caused over 1,400 tons of fuel to leak into the water, some part catching fire, and while there were 2,477 survivors, no one is quite sure how many people lost their lives. This is because it was obviously a hectic rescue mission that had people rushing aboard. No one is quite sure just how many people were on board before the attack happened, but it is thought that somewhere from 4,000 to 6,500 people might have lost their lives during this, which is a terrifying number. In our number 5 spot today, we have the SS General Slocum. This passenger steamboat was built in Brooklyn, New York, and on June 15, 1904, it was carrying members of the St. Mark's Evangelical Lutheran Church as they were on their way to a church picnic. They were traveling up the East River on the way to Long Island Sound when a fire started in the lamp room. Considering the fact that the lamp room was obviously filled with lamp oil, while a fire on board a ship is never good, this is one of the worst case scenarios. Lamp oil, oil rags, a nearby paint locker, and a cabin filled with gasoline actually are what created this worst case scenario. The safety equipment of this ship was not nearly up to standards, as it was rarely even checked, and when the crew attempted to get the fire hose in order to put out the flames, they found a rotten fire hose that crumbled in their hands. The life jackets being given out to people began to fall apart, and they couldn't even access the lifeboats at all. I cannot even imagine the panic people were feeling at this point. Many of the passengers saw no other option and they jumped in the water to try and swim, but like many Americans at the time, they didn't know how, and they were wearing heavy wool clothes which only worked to weigh them down. At the end of the day, it is said that around 1,021 people lost their lives in this absolutely tragic event. In our number 4 spot today, we have the SS Kiangya. On December 4th, 1948, this ship was carrying thousands of passengers who were fleeing Shanghai due to the advancing People's Liberation Army. On this day, the official number of passengers was said to be 2,150, which was already almost double its capacity, but it said that several thousand more people crowded onto this ship right before it left the docks. I mean, this makes a lot of sense. It's weighing the risk of packing onto this boat versus staying in the situation you're currently trying to flee. As this ship got to the mouth of the Hangpu River, it is believed that it may have struck some sort of World War II era mine or something, because it just exploded. Rescuers were also unaware of the explosion for hours, which only made the situation worse. Somewhere around 700 passengers were rescued, but this meant that a number estimated to be somewhere from 2,750 to as many as 4,000 people lost their lives in this explosion and the subsequent sinking of the ship. In our number 3 spot today, we have the HMS Armenia. This was a Soviet passenger ship that was first launched in November of 1928, and she had a maximum capacity of 980 passengers. During the Second World War, this ship was put to use by transporting troops, and from October 9th, 1941, the ship was used to evacuate soldiers, workers, and materials from Odessa. In November of 1941, there was the invasion of German troops that led to an extreme rush to evacuate the hospitals in the city of Sevastopol, and the Armenia was repurposed again into a hospital ship. This led to about 4,000 wounded people and medical personnel from 11 different hospitals being loaded onto the ship to set sail towards Yalta. Once there, another 1,000 passengers were loaded onto the ship in a rush, none of which were officially recorded. On November 7th, the ship was attacked by a German Henkel HE-111 bomber, and in just 4 minutes the ship sadly sank, taking the lives of almost everyone on board. Just 8 people survived. In German records, there was no mention that the Armenia was a hospital ship, so it's unclear if they omitted that detail or if they mistakenly believed that it was a troop carrier. Either way, it is absolutely devastating. In our number 2 spot today, we have the SS Principe Umberto. This ship was built in 1909 as an Italian passenger ship, but in the times during the First World War, it ended up being converted into an armed merchant cruiser. On June 8, 1916, the ship was transporting troops on the Adriatic Sea. These troops were a part of the 55th Infantry Regiment, and they were on their way back from Albania to Italy. Although this ship was accompanied by others, it still ended up being struck by an Austro-Hungarian U-5 submarine that had launched a torpedo attack. The ship ended up sinking just minutes later, and it is said that this disaster took the lives of 1,926 men, making it the worst naval disaster of the First World War in terms of lives lost. In our number 1 spot today, we have the Yamato. The Yamato was a Japanese battleship that served in the Second World War. She was the lead ship of her class of battleships, and she was one of 2 of the heaviest and most powerfully armed battleships ever constructed. On April 7th, 1945, the ship was about 300 kilometers south of the Japanese island of Kyushu when it was confronted by a US carrier-based aircraft. This aircraft bombed the ship, which led to it capsizing. This then caused the ammunition on board to explode, which tore the ship in 2. After a total of 13 torpedo hits and 8 bomb hits, the ship completely sunk. The ship was accompanied by a light cruiser and 4 other destroyers, which were all sunk in this event as well. This sadly led to thousands of deaths, as most of the crew lost their lives in this battle.
Number 10, Basilosaurus. Sounds like a basilisk. You may be thinking, is she about to say that basilisks are real? Am I wrong? Probably. I don't know you. How are you? How's your day going? Me? I feel like I'm developing thalassophobia. I don't even know how to say that right. Welcome everyone to the Basilosaurus, an evil shark snake whale that actually existed on the planet for a while there. Of course, they were massive, growing to 50 to 85 feet long in size, but its size was about the only thing it had going for it, sadly. It couldn't echolocate, couldn't deep dive or breach, just had to kind of chill at one level. Theoretically, if you did see it while swimming, it couldn't and wouldn't chase you if you dove too deep or climbed up on land, because why would it? It looked terrifying and could kill you, but this creature was probably the one who only ever earned a participation badge in terms of most terrifying creature in the sea. If you're like me, you started out scared, but now you just kind of feel bad for the guy. There's a reason he didn't survive. Number 9, Tanystropheus. It's a water giraffe! Tanystropheus is essentially a water giraffe, except with short legs and a super long neck stretching up to 20 feet long. It could literally be standing on the ocean floor and just have its head poking up like a submarine telescope, just like. Which apparently is exactly what it did when hunting for food. Its front legs were shorter than its back legs, which somehow helped it pitch its neck above the surface to hunt for lunch on land. Fossils of the creature have been found near the waters of Europe and the Middle East and China, but exactly how much time they spent in the water versus on land is still debated. We may never know unless we find a mosquito or something conserved in resin that provides us with enough genetic info so we can bring them back to life. But that'll never happen, will it? Number 8, Jacalopterus. If you're having a bad day, then I have just the words to comfort you. Giant sea scorpion. You see? Nothing could be worse than that, except there is. I'm glad nature decided that we didn't need this and that they went extinct. It existed long before the dinosaurs and was a victim to the Permian-Triassic extinction event, which killed 90% of all life on Earth. One of the largest arthropods to ever exist, it reached about 8 feet long, which is about 3 feet larger than little me. Nothing really like it exists anymore, and its closest existing relatives to some degree is the horseshoe crab. They call it a sea scorpion, but whether its tail actually was venomous, we don't know. Archaeologists aren't sure, but its tail does resemble a scorpion, so they think it could be. Number 7, Helicoprion. Imagine a shark designed to cut pizza into 6 to 8 even slices. That is what a Helicoprion was! A prehistoric shark around 270 million years old, best known for its weird vertically circular toothy saw jaw. Paleontologists aren't quite sure as to where exactly its teeth protruded from. Some even consider that it might be attached to the tail or like the side. But the overall consensus was that it sat straight up in the mouth from the lower jaw. A specimen found in 1950 was located in a bay in Idaho, so we know they used to hang around that part of the world a bit. The mouth saw, as we're gonna call it, had 117 teeth, and based on a 3D animated model, scientists were able to determine that it did jut up from the lower jaw. Like that, like what is that? How did it eat? Like it just doesn't make sense. I'm not really surprised that this guy didn't last, because how would you deal with that? How? Number 6, Dunkleosteus. It's like a very big turtle mated with a shark and then immediately regretted it. Not as big as some of the other creatures I mentioned, but definitely something even they would hesitate to mess with. This dude wasn't a picky eater in any sense. Weighing at 4,000 tons and measuring 33 feet long, this guy was ready and eager to compete with even the toughest ones on this list. Sharp teeth? Didn't need them. It used 2 sharp blades to snap and crush its prey, carving through bone like a hot knife through butter. That's how strong it was. It also had solid bone-like armor near its head that it used as a battering ram against any challengers. I feel like if there were mythical civilizations, this would be like the perfect underwater steed. It was made for war. But also, this was one of the creatures, and probably one of the first, to ever have to engage in coitus in order to reproduce. So, sure, some would say they were fighters, but underneath that hard shell, they were lovers too. But they obviously weren't very good at it because they're extinct now. Before we go any further, remember to hit that like button and subscribe as always for more, especially if you're new here. You like us. Come on, like it, subscribe. We love it. Number 5, Dirkmahara chakrauzi. This one is actually a more recent discovery made in the past 60-ish years. The Dirkmahara is Gaelic for marine lizard, which is exactly what it was, kind of. It's best described as what would happen if you mated a crocodile with a dolphin. Flipper, but scalier. Fossil remains were pieced together like prehistoric Jenga after they were first discovered in 1959. Finally, in January 2015, scientists announced a new genus of ichthyosaur. This creature predates the Jurassic period and was probably one of the head honchos around that time. Had it lived long enough into the Jurassic period, it would probably have been gobbled up, considering the creatures who came after were, quite a bit larger, as we'll discover. Number 4, Pliosaur. So we've talked about massive, more terrifying versions of things on this list, but we couldn't leave out a warped version of a crocodile, now could we? Growing to about 59 feet in length and lived around 155 million years ago, this thing could swallow a Dirkmahara in one bite. Not surprising, since its jaw was about the size of the average human, complete with razor-sharp gnashers. According to fossils found in England and Norway, this creature resembles a crocodile in very similar ways, aside from its long paddle-shaped limbs. This allowed it to swim at insanely fast speeds, able to travel around 6 miles per hour. Archaeologists have found the remains of mainly mollusks and other marine reptiles in its stomach, but more terrifyingly, other dinosaurs. Jury is still out as to whether they took the creatures down themselves or feasted on any remains they found, the latter being more likely. Number 3, the Megalodon. Scared of sharks? Well, maybe skip ahead because we are about to talk about the guy we are all grateful doesn't exist anymore. The Megalodon. 2 words, Big Daddy. This guy was bigger than a school bus with giant teeth ready to tear into ambitious prey like whales and whatever else it felt like. Fossils of this mammoth of nightmares have been found across the world from Europe to Africa to North America. This beast had no boundaries, and of course, when you're as big as this guy, why would you? It's a common belief that they coexisted with dinosaurs, but they actually missed them by around 40 million years. They actually lived around 2.6 to 1.5 million years ago, which implies it may have been around for humans. The reason they went extinct, however, is assumed because of the Ice Age. The Megalodon enjoyed warm waters, and it might have diminished its food supply, so thanks nature, it's the best. Number 2, Leviathan melvillei, the ultimate killer whale. The whale's so big it had to eat other whales. And also, if you're wondering if I'm meaning to say Leviathan, I'm not. Though it was originally Leviathan, they had to change it because it was taken. So Leviathan it is. If you've heard the horrific story of Moby Dick, then this would be the whale that they face, though probably not because they were extinct long before the book was even written. They lived around 12 to 13 million years ago during the Miocene epoch and could grow up to 45 to 60 feet. The head alone was around 3 meters long. On top of their immense size, they had a terrifying set of sharp, deep-rooted teeth, each about the size of a 2-liter bottle of pop, which is more than double the size of a T-Rex's teeth. So with big teeth needs big game, and the Leviathan rose to the occasion. From large squids to other whales, the Leviathan was a force to be reckoned with, and one I never ever want to encounter. So if there's a trip going back in time, count me out. Number 1, the Tylosaurus. It sounds massive, it is massive. It makes you glad you weren't around 65 million years ago. The Tylosaurus was a water-bound lizard who had strong, sturdy limbs that evolved to eventually walk on land. Not a pleasant thought. Its gaping mouth allowed it to swallow creatures whole, or if it couldn't do that, its strong jaws and razor-sharp teeth took care of that. It could grow to the length of 45 feet. I'm 5'6", so it could fit about 8 of me.
Number 10, the KAZ-2. The KAZ-2 incident took place in 2007, quite recent in comparison to the rest of this list. It took place off the coast of Australia, and it remains a perplexing mystery to this day. Check this out. The yacht was discovered adrift by a rescue helicopter, immediately prompting a search operation that unveiled a puzzling scene. See, when the rescuers approached the KAZ-2, they found the engine still running, the sails partially raised, and all personal belongings, including wallets and identification, all untouched, still on board. The life jackets were also found neatly stowed away. Adding to the mystery surrounding the disappearance of these 3 crew members, an extensive search was launched involving maritime authorities and volunteers, but no trace of the crew could be found. Investigations to the circumstances leading up to the incident revealed that the yacht had been on an adventurous journey along the Australian coastline, with plans to reach the Great Barrier Reef. So one theory suggests that a sudden event, maybe a freak wave or a strong gust of wind, could have caused 1 or more crew members to fall overboard. No life jackets, you know, maybe this happened. The remaining crew might have attempted a rescue but then were unsuccessful, leading to their own disappearance. I mean, who knows? Without any eyewitness accounts or evidence, this explanation remains purely speculative. Number 9, the MV Joyita. The MV Joyita incident occurred in 1955, and it's one of the most enduring maritime mysteries in history. The vessel was a charter fishing boat and embarked on a voyage from Samoa to the Tokelau Islands and never reached its destination, of course. Now, the bizarre circumstances surrounding this discovery weeks later continue to confuse investigators. Again, we have no idea what happened. This is pretty bizarre. When the MV Joyita was eventually found, it was found partially submerged and in a severely damaged state. What the most unsettling part was the complete absence of its 25 passengers and crew members. Lifeboats were missing and there were signs of struggle on board, including bloodstains and a dislodged radio. So something happened. Someone did something. However, despite the alarming conditions, no bodies were ever found either on the vessel or in the surrounding waters. The search for answers began with various theories proposed to explain the disappearance. Some suggest that foul play might have been involved, hence the, red stuff everywhere, pointing to the possible piracy or mutiny, who knows. Others consider the possibility of a tragic accident, such as, again, a rogue wave or structural failure that led to the vessel taking on some amount of water. Comment down below, what do you guys think happened? Because I'm trying to figure this out as I'm going here, and I have no ideas. Terrifying. The ocean's so terrifying. Number 8. The SS Waratah. Once a renowned luxury steamer, the SS Waratah embarked on its ill-fated journey from Durban to Cape Town back in 1909. Now, the ship was operated by the Blue Anchor Line. It was considered one of the most luxurious vessels of its time. However, tragedy struck when the Waratah vanished without a trace right off the coast of South Africa. The ship's disappearance remains one of the greatest maritime mysteries to this day, of course, with 211 passengers and crew members on board. That is a massive amount of crew. The sudden vanishing of the vessel sent shockwaves through the shipping industry. Now, despite extensive search efforts conducted by multiple ships and aircraft, volunteers, you name it, no wreckage, lifeboats, bodies, or any tangible evidence of the Waratah's fate was ever found. Number 7. The USS Cyclops. It was once a massive United States Navy cargo ship. It became one of the most perplexing disappearances of all time. In 1918, during World War I, the Cyclops embarked on a routine voyage from Brazil to Baltimore. With it, it was carrying manganese ore and 309 crew members. However, the ship would never reach its destination. Instead, it plunged into the depths of the Bermuda Triangle. Heard about that one before? The Bermuda Triangle was an area in the western part of the North Atlantic Ocean, and it's been long associated with unexplained phenomena and mysterious disappearances. Now, the vanishing of the Cyclops only adds to this enigma surrounding this triangle region, this scary triangle on Earth. But as you've heard from this list, anything could have happened. Waves, mutiny, pirates, just the ocean being the ocean. Really hard to tell at this point. Number 6, the USS Porpoise. The USS Porpoise was an American warship and embarked on a surveying mission in the Pacific Ocean back in 1854, only to, of course, vanish. No ideas. Just me now on YouTube going, hey, any ideas? The ship was carrying a crew of 90 sailors, and they set out on its voyage with the objective of conducting hydrographic surveys and exploring uncharted waters. Pretty brave stuff. We love this. However, the Porpoise and its crew were never seen again, leaving behind this haunting mystery that, again, we still can't solve. I hope that we solve some of these one day, or we find a piece of a boat somewhere so we can maybe scratch one of these off our list, but again, with the ocean being 80% undiscovered, it's probably not going to happen. The ship sailed from Hong Kong, making its way towards the Hawaiian Islands, and it was last heard from on July 22nd, 1854, when it communicated with another vessel, the USS Vincennes. After that communication, that was it. The Porpoise seamlessly vanished from the face of the Earth. Numerous theories have emerged to explain the fate of the USS Porpoise, but none provide any decent explanation. One possibility that we're kind of leaning into is that the USS Porpoise may have encountered navigational difficulties or struck a submerged reef. Those are our main two right there. Let's hope it hit the reef, because I don't even want to know what the other one looks like. Number 5, the USS Scorpion. The ill-fated USS Scorpion was an American nuclear submarine that mysteriously disappeared in the Atlantic Ocean in 1968. Nice, a nuke sub, just gone. Okay, guess we'll find it hopefully one day. On board was a crew of 99, and the disappearance of the submarine sent ripples through the naval community. This was a big deal. This is a very interesting time. The USS Scorpion was expected to return to its port in Norfolk, Virginia, but its days turned into weeks, so it was clear that something had gone terribly wrong. Despite deploying massive search operations, not a single trace of the sub was ever found, as if swallowed whole by the ocean. It wasn't until several months later that the wreckage was finally located. So some of these have brighter endings. Some of them we can see wreckage and we can put together a story, but most of the time we can't find anything. So this is kind of lucky, if I can say that. The remnants of the once formidable USS Scorpion were found resting at an incredible depth of 10,000 feet below the ocean's surface. What led to the tragic end of such an advanced submarine? A little bit different. This was a sub, not a ship, so we have more questions this time around, if anything. Number 4, the Mary Celeste. The disappearance of the Mary Celeste is a famous maritime mystery that occurred back in 1872. Now, the ship was found adrift in the Atlantic Ocean with no crew on board. Again, another haunting image, something you never want to roll up to, despite everything appearing to be in order on board. Now, numerous theories have been put forward to explain this event. The Mary Celeste was discovered by another vessel, the Dei Gratia, and upon investigation, it was found that the ship's cargo and provisions were largely intact. However, there were no signs of struggle at all or no obvious explanation for the crew's disappearance, so abducted by aliens. No one knows. This is so random. One theory suggested the crew may have abandoned the ship due to a perceived danger, such as a leak or a fire in the cargo hold, but subsequent investigations found no evidence to support any of those theories. So again, we're left here clueless and very scared. Number 3, the USS Indianapolis. The USS Indianapolis was a United States Navy cruiser that suddenly vanished in 1945 during World War II. Now, the ship had just completed a top secret mission delivering components of the atomic weapon that would soon be later dropped on Hiroshima. So this was again, a big trip historically. Now, tragically, the ship was then torpedoed by a Japanese submarine and then it sank in the Philippine Sea. The incident resulted in the loss of hundreds of lives. The initial disappearance of the USS Indianapolis, at first it went unnoticed, and it wasn't until days later that survivors were spotted by chance during a routine aerial patrol. Again, that's haunting, just to see people in the sea. I mean, better than what we've heard so far, but still, what do you do at that point? By that time, many crew members had succumbed to exposure, dehydration, or shark attacks. The delayed rescue raised questions about why the distress signals from the ship had gone unnoticed in the first place. Investigations revealed that the messages had been mishandled, and the ship's failure to reach its expected destination had not triggered a search operation. Things have changed now. Now we're apparently running by text messages down below, so who knows. Number 2, the USS Grayback. The USS Grayback was an American submarine that prowled the expanses of the Pacific Ocean, striking fear into the hearts of enemy vessels, or at least it was supposed to, until it vanished. With a successful combat record, the Grayback was considered an essential asset until it vanished in 1944. The Grayback failed to return from patrol one day, and an air of disbelief surrounded its sudden and unexplained disappearance. Nobody knew what to do first at this point. This is, where do you start with a missing ship or a sub. The official explanation pointed towards an operational error in deciphering the submarine's last known position, which is something we're kind of hearing about lately in the news. This misinterpretation tragically led to the search efforts being astray, and the Greyback was declared lost at sea forever. For many decades, the submarine's fate remained shrouded in mystery, its whereabouts were unknown, but then, in a chilling revelation, the Greyback's watery grave was finally discovered recently in 2019. Yeah, it takes a while to find things. Number 1. The KRI Nengala. During a routine training exercise in the Bali Sea, the KRI Nengala, a German-made vessel, set out with 53 brave souls on board. Now suddenly, an unsettling turn of events unfolded. The Nengala vanished with no trace, no signal, nothing. It just left behind a wake of uncertainty and fear. A massive international search and rescue operation was immediately launched as nations rallied together in a race against time to locate this missing submarine and its crew. Naval vessels, aircraft, and the best technology they can get their hands on, they were all deployed in a desperate search for answers. Days turned into nights, and loved ones were waiting anxiously for any news. But finally, a chilling discovery shattered all hope that remained. The wreckage of KRI Nengala was found on the ocean floor, fragmented into 3 haunting parts. So it's believed that a blackout occurred at some point, leading to a loss of control over the submarine, and then, well, in the haunting depths of the Bali Sea, the vessel succumbed to all the immense pressure and its hull compromised.
Number 10. The Antikythera device. I think I said that right. The Antikythera mechanism or device, I mean, this sounds like something straight out of Call of Duty Zombies, but the discovery comes to us straight from the magical land of antiquity, the land of marble, democracy, and olive oil. Very nice, beautiful. It's more Italian than Greek, but okay, we're gonna go with it. In 1901, Greek divers found a shipwreck not too far from the island of Antikythera. Naturally, they looked in to see what was inside. Remnants of cargo included pottery, coins, jewels, and a strange gear-like device. Later, it was dubbed the Antikythera device. It was also later discovered to be that of a very early analog computer. Ooh. It was a fancy way of saying a basic or manual power computer that calculates simple solutions, or that of a singular solution. It might not sound like much, but to me it's a very unique find. Sure, this machine was simple, but it makes us wonder what else may have been lost to time. It's thought to have been used as an astrological calendar, aiding the user in mapping out where the sun and moon will be on different dates. Pretty cool, I don't know, how do they do that though? That's, you know what I mean? Like, how do they think of that? I couldn't even think of that. I'm a modern guy. Jeez. Number 9, purple orb. I've been around for a little while now, and in my scientific research, I've seen my fair share of orbs. You got Goku's Kamehameha, you got the orbs in Mario Party. Heck, I've chased so many orbs in Call of Duty Zombies, I've lost count. The point I'm making here is, I know an orb when I see an orb. I know one when I see one. The purple orb found at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean floor, not too far from the California coast. Well, frankly, I have no idea what this is, said also the scientist who discovered it in 2016 while exploring the ocean floor. Scientists discovered a purple spherical blob, aptly named Blobus purpurus. You can't get better than that, folks. Naturally, using a very high-tech device called a vacuum, we sucked that bad boy up like a farmer gets sucked up in a UFO in the middle of a cornfield in Arkansas. For further analysis, of course. What else? The verdict? We ain't too sure yet. It could be some form of sea slug, but if that's the case, it's the first purple one ever caught, showing that if you look hard enough, you can find shiny Pokemon too. Number 8, the Megalodon. This one goes out to all the people who went to see a movie called Jaws in the 70s and had no idea what they were in for. I can only imagine what kind of pants-soiling experience that must have been. For our younger audience to understand, there just wasn't any movie like Jaws around back then. It was pretty unique. A summer blockbuster, and it changed film forever, honestly. It also made people think twice about going into deep water at the beach. You never know, I know that was a movie, but you never know, said people. Well, what if I told you Jaws weren't too far from the truth? Yes, that's right, folks. Fossils have been found dating back to 20 million years ago, and these fossils belong to that of the mega shark, the Megalodon. A great white shark is anywhere between 4.5 meters to around 8 meters at the most. The Meg, as she's commonly called, she's estimated to be around 17 meters. That's over 50 feet in American, folks. That's a big fish, man. While a full fossil has never been found, teeth and some bone paint an image of a very beastly fish. Not what I want to cross. I just stay out of the water. I like water, but I like swimming pools, chlorine. I'd rather swim in pee than with sharks. Okay, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm here to tell you, folks. Number 7, the city of Baiae. Okay, so Romans, right? I mean, no one does it like the Romans do. Gold, marble, parties. When they sent it, buddy, It was full send. Well, what if I told you that the Romans had a Las Vegas? Well, sort of. Obviously, there wasn't a majestic city in the middle of the desert with slot machines, line dancers, and Elvis Presley, but both cities were both built by corrupt Italian leaders. Oh, look at that. Some of these guys wore armor, and the others wore suits, so yeah, kind of makes sense. The city of Baiae was a resort town in the modern sense. A lot of Roman emperors, politicians owned villas there, which attracted other wealthy folks. Kind of like Las Vegas. Despite even Caesar himself owning property here, the city now unfortunately rests under the water, where you can find remnants of Roman activity, fragments of street, pottery, statues, coins, the works. It's not every day you get to visit a Roman resort underwater. It's located in the Mediterranean Sea, just west of the Italian coast. It's close enough to the ocean for me. Close enough, I think it counts. Pretty cool. Number 6, Pavla Petri. Similar to Baiae, but on a much more discovered on accident kind of deal. In 1967, a man named Nicholas Fleming was snorkeling in the area and, well, just so happened to see some weird stuff that he thought resembled a street. Naturally, when he got out of the water and told everybody, no one believed him. So, yeah, right, you're not telling the truth, yeah? It's not true, you're not, no. But after the area was mapped out in 1968, well, it turns out he was telling the truth. Here was the sunken city of Pavla Petri. What they found there was surprising. There were streets, grids, and foundations of buildings remaining. Even a small staircase. With all this evidence present, it's speculated that earthquakes around 1000 BCE are what sunk the city. However, what's most interesting is that it's speculated they were there from around 2800 BCE. So they're there for a long time, and the earthquake took them out. Kinda cool. The earthquakes are not cool, but the story's cool. Number 5, the goblin shark. This animal is why I would hate being a scientist, but also would make for great TV. I get scared easily. It'd be kinda cool. Imagine there was a shark, but Mother Nature wasn't completely sold on the design. Okay, sure, it's fast and lethal and naturally blends into the waters to make an apex predator, but it just needs something more, Mother Nature said. Oh, I know. Let's add nail-like teeth and an extendable jaw. Oh, and a Jedi sixth sense. Yeah, that sounds right. Yes. That is right. The goblin sharks are the weird distant cousin of the shark. They live at the bottom of the ocean floor and eat pretty much whatever they can find down there. They hunt in darkness using their elongated snout that has literally a spider sense when something gets close to it, and a jaw that extends to help them grab food. It's like having Commando Pro from MW2, if anyone remembers that. Remember that one? That was hard. That was a tough perk, man. It got in the way of a lot of things. It just goes to show that there's a lot of weird things at the bottom of the ocean, and it really, I wouldn't be surprised if we find some more weird stuff down there. It's gonna happen one day. Number 4, shipwreck of the San Jose. San Jose was part of the Spanish treasure fleet in the early 1700s, which in case you didn't know, was basically big boats for carrying all their loot and booty back to Spain. These ships were filled with everything of value: spices, tobacco, booze, silver, gems, metals, and most importantly, gold. Oh yes. I mean, that was the reason why they were there. She sank in 1708, but not too far from Colombia. She was eventually found by the Colombian Navy and has since been guarded as a state secret. I wonder why. The estimated value of the loot inside the ship's hull is to be worth around $15 billion US. Wow, that's a lot of money. Number 3, the big squid. This one is simple. In the last couple years, both unmanned expeditions and cameras attached to deep sea drilling rigs have caught footage of giant squids. This is impressive for 2 reasons. 1, their size. I mean, these guys are massive, and well, 2, because of their elusive nature and the fact they live really far down in the ocean, we just don't know that much about them and or have that much footage on them. So we take anything we can get. The largest squid on record from head to, well, tentacle or appendage, whatever you want to call it, measured in at a whopping 43 feet. That's a big squid, man. It's almost hard to imagine creatures living that far down there that big. It's a good thing it's difficult for us to get down there. Not that I have any interest going down there, it's just, you know, I'm not so scared. I'm not scared. I'm a little scared. Number 2, anglerfish. Here's another horror from the depths of the ocean. Folks around my age may recall the anglerfish from the terrifying moment in the SpongeBob SquarePants movie. Movies and media is how I relate to things. Just trust me. Remember the part with the ice cream? Remember he's got the ice cream and he's eating them? Remember that part? Yeah, it's weird. Anglerfish are best known for their third appendage that in some anglerfish possess the ability of bioluminescence, or like a fluffy antenna that kind of just hangs off the forehead. What's the reason for this decorative dancey bit? Well, it's to lure in food, like a fishing lure that we would use. Kind of cool. That's when it strikes with its razor sharp teeth and the most awful surprise attack ever from probably one of the most, if not the ugliest fish out of the ocean. Number 1. Crop circles. Most crop circles that you find are found in cornfields in middle America, where people claim that little green men came to visit them in the middle of the night. I swears by it. Well, as some divers discovered in 1995, there were crop circles at the bottom of the ocean. But what could make those? Aliens? No one knew what was causing them. Well, it turns out that in 2011, the mystery was solved. It was actually a cute pufferfish, or I say one. It was actually a species of cute pufferfish that were making art on the ocean floor with their fins in hopes of recruiting a mate. It's a good thing I don't have to use art because I was never good at drawing. It wouldn't go very well. Good thing I got cute little blue eyes. Oh my goodness.
Number 10. Roman sea curses. Okay, the 1st century, a great place to begin with most things that are horrible and new to humans. Romans did things a little differently. We can't figure out yet how they engineered aqueducts or how that many people watch Colosseum battles. Yeah, I can't watch an armbar during UFC, let alone bring my family to the Colosseum. Be like, that's a lion. That's a guy getting eaten by the lion. Yeah, it's him. Ancient Roman naturalist Pliny the Elder, he wrote a book on natural history, and in said book, this go-to, might I add, on ancient history, the Elder wrote about half-human, half-fish creatures that he called Nereids. That sounds like mermaids, Avatar, I don't even know, Atlanteans. He even added to his first observation detailing that the human parts of said body were covered in rough scales. Human in appearance, but still fishy nonetheless. Awesome. Guess we have those to look forward to. The Elder also recalls a seaman who would climb ships at night and then sink them. Kind of like Aquaman, only he wouldn't help people. He would actually put them in life-threatening situations. But still cool. He probably looked like a badass climbing that ship, you know? Number 9. Sirens, aka mermaids. Here we go. Figured I'd talk about these ones as well. The mythology surrounding sirens, it's interesting, but I don't know how I feel about it yet. We have to talk about it in the comments. I don't think we have Atlanteans flirting with sailors per se, but I do believe there's some sort of creature that's hybrid human fish. You know what I mean? On his first trip overseas in 1493, Christopher Columbus claims to have seen not 1, but 3 sirens. Yeah, he even wrote about it. He said they rose well out of the sea, but they are not so beautiful as they are said to be. Okay, he's rhyming, that's always fun. Thank you, Columbus. For their faces had some masculine traits. That's what he added afterwards. I would think I'd be a very cute mermaid. Honestly, thank you so much. I could probably trick Christopher Columbus and be like, hey, come to this island. Just wave in and do my little fish thing, whatever. So what did Christopher Columbus see? I mean, when it comes to correctly identifying places and or people, obviously Chris can get confused. He's not really our go-to guy, I don't think anymore. So historians believe Columbus may have seen a few manatees and not mermaids. Either way, I'm like, you know what? Both are kind of terrifying to see out of nowhere. Number 8. The Kraken. For ages now, sailors from Norway and Greenland have shared tales of this giant sea monster, and you've probably heard about it as well. Or if you've seen the hit franchise, Pirates of the Caribbean, you've probably seen it in IMAX. Tentacles big enough to pluck you out of your boat. This thing is terrifying, right? We all know about the Kraken. In 1857, Danish naturalist Japetus Steenstrup found a large squid beak, and soon after was sent parts of another specimen from the Bahamas, okay? So something was out there. He concludes that the Kraken is real and that this was proof, and that these parts were maybe part of a species of giant squid called Architeuthis dux, which translates to ruling squid in Latin. Very little is known about giant ruling squid, of course, because they're so hard to track, but we did get a photo of one in 2005 and a video of another in 2013. Number 7. Yellow Brick Road. Deep sea divers may have found the road to Atlantis, or Oz, one of the two. Back in May 2022, this bizarre path was spotted in the Pacific after an exploration vessel, Nautilus, caught the rocky formation near Hawaii. Just a nice place of unknown everything in that ocean. Awesome, we love exploring. The exploration team said in a recent interview with WION News that our corps of exploration have witnessed incredibly unique and fascinating geological formations while diving on the Liliuokalani Ridge. The 90-degree fractures are most likely the results from, a big eruption from a volcano a long time ago. The Marine National Monument, or PNMM for short, is the largest fully protected conservation area in the world. So let's not litter anymore, maybe, I don't know. It covers more than 580,000 square miles in the ocean. So far we've only discovered 3% of its seafloor, so I'm sure there's many more discoveries of roads apparently leading to Atlantis. Let's hope. Number 6, the Great Lakes Griffin. Back in 2018 in Lake Michigan, diver Steve Liebert found what he believed was the holy grail of Great Lakes shipwrecks. Now this is exciting to some, I can't even look at photos, I have thalassophobia. The Griffin sank back in 1679. Divers have been searching for this beauty for a very long time. As a kid, Steve himself, Steve Liebert, was talking about the shipwreck when his history teacher stopped and said, "Hey, who knows, maybe one of you will find the Griffin." Imagine that, your grade 8 teacher tells you somebody will find a ship one day and that somebody was actually you. Yeah, at 76 years old, Steve discovered the wreck. It was 2018, but his research began 40 years ago. Liebert began diving back in 1981 after an amazing teacher got him motivated. It took a long time to track down, of course, but I think it was worth it, we can all agree. If you're in any Great Lakes, keep your eyes open for, 50-foot long ships from the 1600s. They're always lurking below. That's why I can't swim. Like, I put goggles on, look down, and see the top of a ship. I would throw up. I would literally... That's it. Maybe because I'm like afraid of heights, and for some reason when I'm in like the ocean or like a lake, I feel like I'm up high. Maybe that's what it is. Number 5, toxic waste. Okay, we mentioned a yellow brick road. It's always fun. It's a fun time, a creepy looking discovery, but certainly not harmful like this next one here. Yeah, for the back 9, we're gonna crank it up a bit. Sometimes we find literal barrels of waste. This dump site here was discovered off the coast of LA. It's 3,000 feet deep, and these deep ROVs found around 27,000 barrels of waste. Looks like the climax of a Breaking Bad finale. It's just, what is going on down here? What happened? Who put these here? The 2021 discovery was deemed staggering. Yeah, that's one of many words I can say on YouTube, for sure. You can literally see in these photos like this aura of toxic waste, like just a plume of evil coming from these barrels. That's brutal. Recycle, please. Number 4, the frilled shark. Also alarming, just in its own natural, terrifying way. Back in 2004, marine biologists discovered a dinosaur. Yeah, they discovered the frilled shark. It was lurking around 870 meters below the surface. Now this one looks like an eel, almost. It's so scary, I don't know. Frilled sharks can grow up to 7 feet long, and they fight like Daredevil. They can hunt in complete darkness. They don't have to look, they just use their senses, and they don't use sunlight. I almost got lost there while I was doing that bit, but if I was a frilled shark, I'd be dead on still, I'd be fine. They don't need to see anything, so remember that next time you're skinny dipping. Unless you can hold your breath for a long time, you won't actually run into the frilled shark, so don't worry about that. They're only found a mile below the surface, and again, they're rare as hell. Have you ever dealt one of these? Are you a diver? Have you seen a shark? Comment down below some of your diving nightmares, just so I can read them. And then go, oh, I'm never going in the ocean ever again. That's what I like doing. I like going, ooh, I'm never doing that ever again. That's what Reddit's for. Number 3. The deepest shipwreck. The USS Johnston was a US Navy destroyer which sank during the Battle of Samar back in 1944. It was after a battle with a large fleet of Japanese warships and it went down. Now Victor Vescovo, who is one of the few people who has made the dive into the Marianas Trench, that's why his name sounds familiar, he was one of the people who first stumbled upon the remains of this sunken warship. The ship's remains were first found in 2019 and was known as the deepest known shipwreck as it was found 6,456 meters deep in the Philippine Sea in the Pacific Ocean. I lost track of what I was saying. It's so deep, I can't even imagine. That's like a mountain, you know what I'm saying? We have a new record holder, believe it or not. Yeah, the world's deepest shipwreck was discovered 4 miles underwater in the Philippines. Yep, this is now the world's deepest shipwreck that was ever discovered. This is terrifying. I want to move on right now. I'm gonna throw up. Number 2, loud ocean heat. This is just naturally and so scary. Here we go. How depressing is this one? Okay, back in 1991, scientists lowered these massive speakers, like nightclub subwoofers almost, into the waters at Heard Island. Also, like Heard Island speakers, is this a bit? I wish I was making this up. They made the pun for me. They did my job. I'm upset. These speakers emitted low frequency sounds all across our oceans. Now these signals were later picked up by receivers near California and Bermuda. And these signals contain information on the temperature of our oceans. Our oceans absorb more than 90% of energy left from global warming. Doesn't help when we lower 27,000 barrels of into it. So let's just maybe stop that for a bit. There were a few scientists who at the time were also concerned about how these low frequency sounds may be affecting our ocean life. Yeah, what does that sound like to a beluga whale? And finally, number 1, the Vasa shipwreck. Back in 1628, the Vasa sunk within 20 minutes of setting sail. This is a tragedy. This claimed the lives of 30 souls on board. How tragic is this? Now, the Swedish Navy launched the ship August 10, 1628. It was once considered a high-tech warship, even referred to as spectacular. So what the hell happened? Well, the first rush of wind caught it off guard, started making a little topsy-turvy, and the second gush of wind sank it. Just like that. There was no war, there was nothing going on. just a bottle of clink, and then it went down. So fast. It's like the scene in Shrek where it sinks fast comedically, but this was real life, so it wasn't comedic at all. It was actually rather terrifying. There was a crowd around and everything to send it off, but the 64 bronze cannons that were installed during the rushed process of building the warship, they were deemed too heavy, evidently. The lack of oxygen in the water allowed for its rediscovery to continue its story. That's how we know how she went down. The Vasa was built with carvings all around the king at the time, King Gustav II. So when the wreck was discovered in 1961, 95% of the wood was still intact. It's deep, dark, and cold. Yeah, nothing really, nothing affects it.
Starting off this list, in our number 10 spot we have the Godzilla shark. With a name like that, this creature is surely anything but disappointing. About 300 million years ago, these guys ruled the sea and were one of the most terrifying sea creatures ever on our planet. Fossils of these guys have been found in the Manzano Mountains, which lie east of Albuquerque, New Mexico, and they were found in 2013 by paleontologist John Paul Hodnett. So think of a massive shark, but now picture it covered in scales, like a reptile. Okay, now add 12 rows of super sharp teeth, and also the largest dorsal fin spines of any shark that has ever lived. Okay, now you've pretty much got the Godzilla shark. It was nicknamed the Godzilla shark because of its size, as the skeleton is the largest fossil of its kind ever discovered in the area, as well as the fact that its fin spines are so intriguing to look at. While it was called the Godzilla shark upon its discovery, it has since received a more official name of Hoffman's dragon shark, both to honor the family that owned the land where the skeleton was found, and as an homage to its monstrous and reptilian appearance. In our number 9 spot today we have the Shastasaurus. This extinct genus of Ichthyosaurus is one of the largest marine reptiles known, growing to be 21 meters long. One of the most interesting things about these guys is that they were quite specialized because they had quite a wild food preference. These guys had a thirst for squid. A study of their fossils revealed that they had short snouted skulls, which has led experts to believe that their jaws had the ability to open extremely quickly and very wide. This happened so fast it created a sort of vacuum inside of their mouth, sucking in anything that was in front of it. These guys didn't bother with teeth or strong jaws, they didn't need a crazy bite force or really to even move that quickly. They basically just needed to swim over to wherever their desired squid was hanging out and open their mouth. In our number 8 spot today we have the Dunkleosteus. Dunkleosteus. I don't know, man. This creature was a genus of Placoderm, which is a class of fish that has been extinct for around 360 million years. These ancient swimmers had osteoderms, which means that they had these plates of exposed bone that served as protection. It's like a built-in armor. These guys were some of the largest and most powerful Placoderms ever, and it had a terrifying ability that made it quite a worthy predator. It was their insanely powerful bite force, which has been estimated to be about 750 kilograms. That's wild. This has led experts to believe that these guys may have been a hypercarnivore, which means that they were feeding on some pretty tough prey. Other creatures that have outer protection like they do. Ammonites, they were able to chew through some pretty tough exteriors. In our number 7 spot today we have the Mauisaurus. These guys are a creature that was once very real, but they are thankfully a relic of our past because they are absolutely horrifying. They are named after the Maori god Maui, who is said to have pulled the islands of New Zealand up from the sea floor, so anything named after him is of course going to be an absolutely ginormous beast. The neck of this creature measured around 49 feet long, which is the longest proportionate neck of any animal. The entire creature measured around 66 feet long, so it's clear that their neck counted for a very large portion of their body. But like, imagine a swimming dinosaur creature with a huge snake for a neck. That's kind of what these guys were like. These guys lived on Earth during the Cretaceous period, which is good news for us, but not so much for the creatures that lived at that time. Creatures would jump into the water to avoid a T-Rex only to find this guy waiting for them. Yeah. No thank you. In our number 6 spot today we have the Helicoprion. This animal existed somewhere around 250 million years ago, and while it looks more like a shark than anything else, scientists now know it was actually a creature that is related more closely to chimeras, which are a fish that separated from the shark family about 400 million years ago. So why is this animal just scary and terrible to look at? Well, that is due to the incredibly unsettling spiral saw formation of teeth that this creature had right on their lower jaw. Yeah, an orthodontist's dream, truly. It's also not like this creature was just born with the teeth that they had for the rest of their lives. No, of course not. They had teeth that could grow, and new teeth could even form. Imagine being in the ocean and you see a huge creature swim up to you that has 4 spiral saws for teeth. No. In our number 5 spot today we have the Megalodon. Is any terrifying prehistoric sea creatures list truly complete without an appearance from the Meg? Megalodons are one of the largest sharks to have ever existed. They were huge, they were terrifying, they were apex predators, and they are the creatures that inspired the tales of Jaws, or the Meg. The teeth on these sharks are so large that they are 3 times larger than the teeth of a modern great white shark. With teeth that size, you can only imagine how large this shark would have been. It's pretty tough to figure out exactly why the Megalodon died out. I mean, they were one of the largest, scariest creatures who shouldn't have had any trouble finding food, but that might not be the case. Some believe it was the cooling water, others believe it was the competition for food. Whatever the case in the end, while the Megalodon is an incredible creature in history, I think we can probably all breathe a sigh of relief that they aren't currently swimming around our oceans. Or are they? In our number 4 spot today we have Cratoxyrhina. Measuring about 7 meters long, these creatures aren't necessarily the largest on this list full of prehistoric giants, but that does not mean it is any less terrifying. Fossil evidence has shown us that these creatures were ready to attack just about anything and everything that ended up in front of them. It could be a 4-meter long fish, a marine reptile like a mosasaur, or even a large turtle, it doesn't matter. The key to what made these guys so incredibly ferocious is their special teeth. Their teeth adapted to have a much thicker enamel, which meant that they were exceptionally resilient. This is perfect when you're trying to cut through shells and bones. These teeth are actually what landed these guys with the nickname of the Ginsu shark, which is named after the famous commercial for Ginsu knives, which are shown slicing through metal cans. In our number 3 spot today we have the Jacalopterus. Okay, I've got 3 words for you. Giant sea scorpion. Yeah, I'm not going in the prehistoric ocean. This 8-foot long arthropod lived in the water with its gross, too large pincers and claws, and honestly it looks like something out of the movie Alien. These guys had segmented bodies, and they are actually the largest known arthropod to have ever existed here on Earth. They had multiple specialized limbs, and some of them even had spikes, like for example, their 18-inch spiked claw that was used to snatch fish as it passed by. It is said that some of these guys would crawl out of the water in order to mate and sometimes shed their outer skin, and all I have to say about that is imagine finding an 8-foot long molt of one of these creatures on the beach right before going in for a swim. You wouldn't, right? I'd swear off all water after that. I'm not even drinking it anymore. I don't want any part of what these guys got going on. In our number 2 spot today we have the Tylosaurus. These creatures belong to the family of mosasaurs, and they have long eel-like bodies that allowed them to smoothly cruise through the waters. They had the ability to have intense bursts of speed that propelled them to their prey, which they could quickly take down. The snout of these creatures is thought to have been quite large and rather robust compared to other species of mosasaurs, which has led researchers to believe that they may have used it to their advantage. To do this, they might have rammed into larger prey so that they were stunned. This gave them time to turn around and finish the prey with their large jaws. Despite these specialized skills, it seems as though these guys weren't very picky with what they ate, as they have been found with all kinds of remains in their stomach area. These creatures were very large, but they were also way faster and more agile compared to their family members. What more could you want in a prehistoric predator? In our number 1 spot today we have the Leeds fish. This is a fish that lived in the oceans of our world from the middle to the late Jurassic. They are the largest ray-finned fish and among the largest fish that are known to have ever existed. The discovery of these fish has been a bit troublesome because of the fact that their skeletons aren't completely made of bone. There were large parts of them made of cartilage which did not fossilize. Because of this, it is difficult to estimate their true size, with estimates in the past ranging as large as 30 meters or 98 feet. More recent research, however, has lowered this number to the still exceptionally large measurement of 16 meters or 52 feet. Despite their large size, however, these fish weren't terrifying apex predators and instead were a part of a lineage of large filter feeders. These fish had gill arches that were lined with gill rakers, which had quite a unique system of bone plates that allowed them to filter the plankton from the seawater, which was their main source of food.
Starting with the sunken monument. Are they man-made steps and ancient pyramids that sank in an earthquake or a natural rock formation? If you guess man-made sunken stuff, you'd probably be correct. While there's no official assertion scientifically or historically, I have eyeballs and so do you, and I feel like that's all you need. Case in point, example 1. So apparently the ocean could have built this. Or apparently example 2, if this is the ocean's work, remind me to snag their info for my next architectural inspiration. If you guys needed more, here's a literal map of the site. If you tell me the ocean built this, tack on that the aliens helped too while you're at it, or maybe ancient mermaids. These strange structures in the water off the coast of Japan, found by a diver in 1986 and then nicknamed Japan's Atlantis, have baffled scientists ever since they were discovered. The rectangular monument is more than 165 feet long and some 65 feet wide, stylized to be kind of like a step pyramid. Nearby are other formations, all which suggest a submerged ancient city. That puts the structures at least 5,000 years old and at oldest more than 20,000, which most likely means they belong to the lost civilization like the legendary Mu or Lemura. Today, it's a popular dive spot with tourists and continues to puzzle people as one of the ancient mysteries researchers can't explain. Next up is a classic, it's the bloop. Similar to hearing your girlfriend fart for the first time since your relationship started, nothing like the mysterious bloop sound recorded in the South Pacific of 1997 has ever been heard before or again. It was very loud, low frequency, and had a unique pattern that makes some think it was a newly discovered creature lurking in the depths, all H.P. Lovecraftian and Cthulhu style. Researchers continued to look for the origin of the noise for years until 2005 they announced it had been an ice quake, which occurs when an iceberg falls off of glaciers. Although the reasoning has been generally accepted, some conspiracy theorists still feel the explanation is meh. There are several unexplained noises that have been recorded over the years, but the second most popular was Julia, which was explained away also as an iceberg, but this time one scraping the ocean floor. So what do you think? Does this sound like an iceberg to you? And as you guys, I'm sure, are fully aware, the ocean is home to a bunch of immortal creatures. Could this tiny jellyfish hold the secret to curing cancer? Smaller than a pinky nail, this sea creature has the Benjamin Button-like effect to revert back to the polyphy stage when injured or starving, earning it the nickname Immortal Jellyfish for how it literally just outsmarts death. Although the species had been known for about 100 years, it wasn't until the 1990s that its incredible phenomenon was discovered. Scientists are unsure exactly how its cells are able to regress and regrow. The lobster, barbecued, baked, sauteed, or just boiled, this animated rock meat literally requires so much butter to be passably eatable. I think we might as well have bowls of that instead of waste our time fighting minuscule shreds of meat out of a shell, but to each their own. It's a debate amongst the scientific community whether these red ocean dwellers are biologically immortal animals. Usually their only cause of death is disease or becoming prey, not old age. You know what they say about a lobster with big feet? He's ancient! Fun fact, the bigger the lobster, the older it is. These creepy crawlers, also known as planarian worms, are famous for their regenerative abilities, where a worm cut across or lengthwise can form two separate worms. This apparently limitless regeneration also applies to aging and damaged tissue, allowing the worms to cheat death indefinitely. Except with the inevitable instances like being eaten by predators. No one's immune to that, even you. Next up is how some folks 9,300 years ago accomplished something we never could: the inexplicable monolith. That Stone Age hunter-gatherers in a now submerged area of the Mediterranean Sea apparently cut from a 15-ton limestone pillar with precision, then drilled holes in it and transported it nearly 300 meters. Oceanographers studying the Mediterranean seafloor in the Sicilian Channel between Tunisia and Sicily in 2012 found the monolith at 131 feet deep, and researchers say this area became submerged when the last ice age ended, give or take 200 years. Before that, the area was a shallow sea with several islands. This discovery provides evidence for a significant Mesolithic human activity in the Sicilian Channel region, writes Emanuel Lodolo and Zavi Ben Abraham in their paper. This discovery of the submerged site in the Sicilian Channel may significantly expand our knowledge of earliest civilizations in the Mediterranean basin and our views on technological innovation and development achieved by Mesolithic inhabitants. The authors say further explorations of the now submerged Mediterranean seafloor shelves that were land before the vast ice age for evidence of human settlements is necessary to understand the origins of civilization in the area. And now we'll attempt, and probably fail like everyone else, to examine the curse of shipwreck 2109. ExxonMobil was laying pipeline when they happened to stumble upon this shipwreck, which had laid undisturbed for 2 centuries, well, before being bisected with an oil pipeline. Marine archaeologists saw it as an opportunity to use undersea technology and uncover a maritime timeline. With robotic submarines now able to dive thousands of feet, the treasures of shipwrecks are now well within reach, or even seeing the Titanic wreck, as we've learned. A team was assembled to explore the wreckage, but nothing ever seemed to go right, thus kicking in the belief of an inexplicable curse. The first explorative sub malfunctioned right as it was getting ready to go check out the wreck. Everything from the video monitors going out whenever they tried to fire the thrusters, to sonar breaking, to hydraulics going haywire one after another. Next, the Navy sent a researcher sub that was basically self-destructing its own rover upon entering the water. It got caught in the propeller and smashed to bits, and when one rover finally got to the wreck, its arms were too short to reach anything and even dropped crucial artifacts they can't find again. Next, a ship dispatched to collect artifacts snags debris in its propeller and ends up dry docked for repairs. When it hits water again, a prop shaft breaks and the whole ship nearly sinks, which brings us up to date on attempts to excavate. About all they have from their explorations is a copper scrap, 11 by 6 inches, brought up from the first dive. Researchers haven't been able to confirm the detail about the boat's nationality, the crew, the rig, or the trade. Despite hours of videos and carefully constructed sonar maps, the only fact the researchers learned consecutively in the last year was that the ship had 2 masts and the number 2109 nailed onto the edge of its rudder. Now we ask ourselves the same question as endless historians and archaeologists: why is there an underwater road? Discovered in the beautiful Bahama waters in 1968, the Bimini Road is made of a number of rectangular shaped stones all lined up with one another. Some who have researched the site say it's man-made and perhaps a breakwater constructed to protect an ancient settlement. Others say it's simply a interesting natural phenomena created over thousands of years by the forces of water. Once again, we have eyeballs, and this is looking pretty man-made. The Bimini Road runs parallel to 2 smaller paths before neatly curving at the end to form a hook. The impressive blocks that make up the road lie in an orderly row along the seafloor and look as if they once had a right-angled corner before being smoothed by natural erosion. Naturally, anything looks unexplained as underwater. Folks jump right to the speculation that might have something to do with a lost civilization, namely Atlantis. It is, of course, nothing to do with Atlantis. In 1978, the Department of Geology at the University of Miami used radiocarbon dating to assess the whole rock samples, shells extracted from the core, and the carbonates cementing the rock core. The findings estimate the age of the Bimini Road to be around 2,000 years old. Their young age alone is hard evidence against Atlantis, which would have sunk 12,000 years ago. Another strange underwater find is the Baltic Sea anomaly. This baby is conspiracy theory candy. In June of 2011, a mysterious object was discovered on the floor of the Baltic Sea between Sweden and Finland. 60 meters in diameter, the object doesn't even look arguably close to natural, and divers say it rests on a pillar of some type with what resembles a series of steps and domed compartments jutting out from the main body of the structure. There even seems to be tunnels or passageways beneath the structure of the unknown object. Research divers say happened next has continued to puzzle those looking to answer the mystery of this anomaly. When the OceanX ship tried to take high-quality images of what was on the seabed, their sensor and photographic equipment failed on them when they were above the mound. Sonar was blocked by mysterious electrical interference, and satellite phones had their batteries immediately drained despite having only just been recently charged. All of this would fuel talk that they had uncovered extraterrestrials, with the dome structure argued to possibly be a cockpit of a flying saucer. Or maybe it was an anti-shipping weapon in the Bothnian Sea for the Battle of Scandinavia. Less far-fetched is the idea that it could be an ancient temple, as Britain was once connected to mainland Europe via an area now called the Doggerland, but it was lost when flooded by rising sea levels in 6500 to 6200 BC. Now it's one of the funniest topics on the internet, the Orca Collegiate of 2023. Last month, a sailor was stranded on the island of Gibraltar after a crew of killer whales attacked his yacht and managed to rip off the rudders. Meanwhile, just 2 days previous, on the 2nd of May, 6 orcas rammed the hull of the Bavaria 46 cruiser yacht in an encounter lasting a near hour. These are just some of the incidents incidents in a string of similar, and although no one can say for sure what is causing these animals to act up, many are theorizing it may have something to do with a whale called White Gladys. She's a traumatized matriarch who has been possibly teaching the young pods of whales how to rip rudders off of boats. Experts believe White Gladys may have suffered a critical moment of agony, such as colliding with the boat or becoming trapped during illegal fishing, which altered her behavior to a defensive fashion. Could White Gladys be orchestrating the attacks against the luxury vessels? Esther Christine Storkson was with her father on a 12-meter yacht when they were jumped by an orca gangle. Recalling the scary moment, Storkson wrote on Facebook, "The whales kept ramming us. We had the impression it was a coordinated attack." You mean co-orcanated, Storkson? Yeah, I'm going there. Most orca interactions have been harmless historically, with orcas only touching an estimated 1 in every 100 boats passing through the area. The new behavior has baffled scientists, with some initially suggesting it could relate to the harmful scarcity of food or the disruptive resumption of business as usual nautica activities in the wake of the pandemic. Others have suggested it could just be playful behavior. No matter what, the internet loves it, and so do I. Now we delve into the mystery of the 4 sunken subs. Within the first months of 1968, 4 separate submarines from 4 separate places, the USS Scorpion, the Soviet submarine K-129, a French submarine named Minerva, and the INS Dakar all sank. The last 2 subs disappeared only 4 days apart, and the Minerva has never been found even though it only disappeared an hour from its home port. First up is on January 25th of that year, the Israeli submarine INS Dakar disappeared. It stopped in Gibraltar, dapped up some orcas, and then bypassed Crete, sending regular transmissions along the way. It was ahead of schedule, it wanted to arrive earlier, but the orders were to keep steady and arrive on the decided date. Then all communication ceased. Its last known location was 160 kilometers west of Cyprus. 2 days after the Israeli submarine vanished, a French submarine disappeared in the waters of the Gulf of Lion, just an hour before it was due to arrive carrying 45 men aboard. Decades later, in 2019, the ship turns up 45 kilometers south of its final destination. This Soviet submarine belonging to the Soviet Navy's Pacific Fleet disappeared while on patrol in the Pacific Ocean. Communication ceased 2 weeks into the mission when it missed its regular March 8th check-in. While the Soviets eventually gave up on their search, the CIA launched one of their own, and the Americans recovered pieces of the wreckage 2,414 kilometers northwest of Hawaii. Lastly, an American submarine called the USS Scorpion vanished in May near the Azores. Its purpose was to surveil Soviet activity in the area, and the Scorpion's last message stated it was closing in on a Soviet vessel to observe. Then it fell silent. The pieces of the wreck currently sit on the seafloor 740 kilometers southwest of the Azores. Because of the material on board, the site is super radioactive. All 4 subs sank inexplicably in the first half of the year. And now, to end off on a spooky note, we have the Octavius ghost ship. The famous Octavius was built during the mid-18th century and departed England to Asia with a crew of 28 men in 1761. While the ship did reach its intended destination about a year later, it was not so lucky on its return voyage. So the captain decided to chance traveling through the Northwest Passage. This feat had not been accomplished, so the captain decided he wanted to be the first to do it, and I guess this is the time. And it would also significantly cut down their return time, so 2 birds, 1 stone. Turns out the captain was a bad stone thrower because he didn't even hit 1 bird. During the fall of 1762, the ship disappeared in North Alaska, where it remained lost for 13 years. In 1775, a whaling ship called the Herald discovered the Octavius stuck off the coast, buried solidly in ice, but not enough to keep the crew of the Herald from exploring it for goods. Instead of discovering treasures or cool things, the Herald crew discovered some new trauma to take home. All 28 crew members of the Octavius are frozen to death below deck, and the frigid temperature kept their corpses frozen solid, sitting or laying exactly where they were once living below deck. The captain of the Octavius was sitting at his desk in the cabin. Crew of the Herald immediately get the hell out of there, and they took nothing except the captain's log to determine what happened on board the ship. The ship's last recorded location in the captain's log was approximately 250 miles north of Uyavik, Alaska. This location is near the start of the Northwest Passage, while their location of discovery was at the end of the passage. Given the last location recorded in the captain's log, it seems Octavius alone did succeed in traveling through the Northwest Passage, but not with anyone alive on board to help. Let's start with the discovery of our beginnings. Number 10 is Waterworld. What is that? Well, to quote geologist Benjamin Johnson and Boswell Wing in a 2020 paper published online by the Journal of Nature Geoscience, it's an early Earth without emergent continents that may have resembled a water world, providing an important environmental constraint on the origin and evolution of life on Earth as well as its possible existence elsewhere. This discovery journey began when Johnson and Wing met at a conference, and Wing shared knowledge of a well-preserved 3.2 billion-year-old ocean crust from the Aegean Eon that was exposed in a remote part of the state of Western Australia. Johnson then joined Wing's 2018 trip, and after taking some of his own rock samples and digging into the library of existing data, Johnson created a cross-section grid of the oxygen isotope and temperature values found in the rock. From this, he created something called an inverse model to come up with the estimates in regard to the isotopes within ancient oceans. His result? Ancient seawater was enriched with about 4 parts per thousand more of a heavy isotope of oxygen than the ice-free ocean of today. I know that's a lot of confusing science jargon, so to simplify for all of us, this was a decrease in heavy isotopes over time, but how does that happen? Our preferred hypothesis, and in some ways the simplest, is that the continental weathering from land began sometime after 3.2 billion years ago and began to draw down the amount of heavy isotopes in the ocean, Johnson said. The section of the ocean crust we studied looks exactly like a much younger ocean crust, aka Earth all these billions of years ago was a water world of submerged continents. Consequently, Johnson said these models inform us about the environment where life originated and evolved. Without continents and land above sea level, the only place for the very first ecosystems to evolve would have been the ocean. Pretty sick start, right? Well, let's look at a secret that's making the ocean sick. Number 9, the human waste. It's genuinely heartbreaking to know that water is from which we came, from which we survive, yet it's the chosen territory that faces an onslaught of human destruction. Thus, why not all discoveries that come from the ocean are ancient relics and unique civilizations. Some deep sea discoveries are just ghastly. Scientists uncovered a massive underwater waste dump off of Los Angeles near Catalina Island in 2021. Hidden from the eye of the public, marine biologists had suspicions and unconfirmed sightings and reports of the waste field, though telltale footage and past records hinted at the magnitude of the last century's massive dumping campaign. The robots dropped in by the Scripps Institution of Oceanography using sonar technology to scour 36 acres of seafloor proved it. They detected about 27,000 barrels, some at 3,000 feet deep. It was staggering to us, Chief Scientist of Expedition Eric Terrell said. These barrels would have been dumped between 1947 and 1961 by the nation's largest DDT manufacturer and contain hazardous and toxic materials. About 500,000 barrels of its acid waste had been poured straight into the water. Are those chemicals moving into the food web, or are they staying somewhat in place? We don't really know, states biologist Catherine Pease in an agreement with Eric Terrell. It's also unknown if the waste can be cleaned up or should be, as it may disturb contaminated soil and could spread toxins, making matters worse. Number 8 is a little less sad. It's the Great Blue Hole. If you didn't know, the Great Blue Hole of Belize is a sinkhole inside of the ocean. It's surrounded by coral and shallow water that emphasize its crusted edge to create a perfectly separated deep blue hue and spherical shape you can see on screen. Researchers also predict it won't be around forever, as waterfalls of sand tumble into the hole every day, slowly filling it up and burying the secrets at its bottom. Researchers believe that the Great Blue Hole was a cave before the last glacial period when the sea levels were lower. Inside this 410-foot deep sinkhole are huge stalactites, dripstone sheets, and columns. And as of 2018, we can say we made it to the bottom. The Aquatica submarine's crew mission was to create a 3D map of the sinkhole, meeting sea turtles and sharks and fish of all kinds as they went. We found conches and conch shells and hermit crabs that had fallen into the hole and suffocated, Erica Bergman said in an interview at the time. They also found a 2-liter Coke bottle at 407 feet and a GoPro full of holiday photos. Alongside the trash were 2 human skeletons, believed to belong to the 2 of 3 divers who were lost in the Great Blue Hole during a previous exhibition. We found the resting place of a couple of folks, and we very respectfully let the Belize government know where we found them. Everyone decided that we would just not attempt any recovery. It's very dark and peaceful down there, just kind of let them stay, Bergman said. Number 7, Frankie's Lost Journey. Lots of boats are found in the ocean, just so many boats. Old, new, wood, metal. The ocean loves its bottomed out boats. One in particular I'm going to be talking about is the rediscovery of Sir John Franklin's expedition, since that's some Canadian history, baby. So it was September 6, 2014, former Prime Minister Stephen Harper announced that one of the fabled lost ships of Sir John Franklin's expedition had been found off of Hat Island in Nunavut. The second was found not far away in 2016. The wooden ship was found sitting upright on the seabed at a depth of 11 meters. The vessel appeared to be almost intact, although the masts are missing. The ships HMS Erebus and Terror, which sailed from England in the summer of 1845, were aiming to chart the Northwest Passage. Obviously that did not happen. Instead they hit ice and everyone died super mysterious deaths, or survived by assimilating with Inuk, but we aren't actually really sure. But in 2020, excavations began and then were cut short by the pandemic, but they did start revealing secrets of this journey. The bodies of more than 30 crewmen from the ships were found on King William Island. Most are still buried there, although 2 were returned to Britain. If papers on the Erebus and Terror had been kept in sealed boxes or drawers, they may have survived the immersion in very cold, dark waters, historian Claire Warrior said. Diaries or written commands would make the most meaningful differences in terms of understanding what happened. This is what we're hoping will be found. And that's exactly what was found in 2022 when excavations of the watery sites began once more. Currently, it's being lab analyzed and I can't wait to know what's inside. Speaking of underwater, number 6 will be underwater rivers. Horrifying every time. Rivers under the ocean exist, rivers under rivers even exist. And no matter where, they're dangerous as hell. The famous example I'm going to be pulling out of my hat for this segment is the Senoit Angelita, which has a thin layer of hydrogen sulfate separating the fresh water from the salty water, found by Anatoly Beselichin and his group of divers around 2014. Up to 115 feet deep, the water is a sweetish flavor thanks to the layer of hydrogen sulfate, which is the result of a phenomena called haloclenia, which is made up of gases that have leaked out of decomposing trees and leaves that fall from the jungle into the Senoit. This creates a false floor at the bottom, which can be traversed to reach a dark, otherworldly chamber that's full of the jungle detritus. However, the sea river phenomena are not something new. There's various underwater rivers worldwide, with one from the Black Sea being the most famous. The Black Sea River runs more than 100 meters deep in the ocean and technically could be considered the 6th largest river in the world. For number 5, we're heading into hot water. During the fall of 2021, deep-sea expeditions in Mexico's Gulf of California, scientists aboard the Schmidt Ocean Institute vessel were marveled by vents spouting superheated fluid for over 2 miles beneath the ocean surface. Their mission was to find newer intriguing life forms, but instead they found what's essentially nature's own jacuzzi tub. The hot vents in this region, called hydrothermal vents, are especially unique. Deep-sea vents, discovered only relatively recently in 1977, often emit dark, chemical, and mineral-rich fluids into the water. The visual created is like an undersea monster petrified in stone, earning them the nickname Black Smokers. But in this deep Mexican realm, the water is starkly different. It's clear, and that's thanks to the different materials and sediments coming from inside the earth out of these underwater vents. As seen in image, sometimes the hot fluid flows upwards like a reverse waterfall, which ultimately builds majestic spirals and mounds above the vent. It's the famous name on the list. Baltic Sea Anomaly is number 4. Alien artifact or ancient something dumped in the sea. So in 2011, explorers found this oval-shaped object with mysterious markings on it on the ocean floor on the bottom of the Baltic Sea. It looks as if it's made a crash landing or at least being dragged some distance, leaving a path in its wake. It also evidently appears to have stairs. Seeing as its size and distinct visual make it obvious this is not a natural phenomenon, despite scientists trying to peddle crap about a glacier somehow making this. And now, aliens are confirmed. So I guess I have to obligingly consider that yes, maybe it was aliens. Maybe. I still believe arguably this was created by an ancient society and sank into the deep. When you look at the Baltic Sea anomaly, what do you think? Let us know in the comments. Number 3 is the mystery of the shipwrecked altar, because one of those things is kind of normal to find in the ocean, the other one definitely isn't. And yet here they both are, deep in the sea around the Aloian islands of Patarrhelia, Lipari, and Panarea. This discovery was made in 2014, alongside more normal things like dozens of amorphae, plates, bowls, and anchors. But it's the exceptional terracotta altar on a pedestal containing decorative carvings of waves that stole the show. While historical sources have referred to sailors making sacrifices to the gods to ensure a safe journey, or give thanks for having navigated difficult passage, this is one of the first examples of an altar on a ship that may have been used for such purposes. Thrilled with the results, excavation leader Sebastiano Tusa said, "I have touched and seen dozens of ancient and modern wrecks in my long career as an archaeologist, but to be able to reach a wreck of a ship sunk 2,000 years ago, which is in the dark and in the silence of 130 feet deep, gave me an indescribable feeling." Brag much? Anyway, the wreck, along with the recovered artifacts, is currently undergoing further analysis to further understand its origin, destination, and life aboard that ancient ship. It's back to disappoint once more. Number 2 is garbage. Easily the scariest thing found in the ocean. Ugly, menacing, it invades every part of the water, and not to terrify, but it will never leave. What is even worse, however, is that garbage patches around the world that create islands of trash clotted together. The most famous being the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, which spans west coast of North America to Japan. There are about 5.25 trillion pounds of plastic plastic waste in our ocean, and studies expected to triple in the next 2 decades if no significant action is done. Meanwhile, most of the garbage in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch is not even big plastics you can pick up, rather the dangerous and evil microplastics that now even affect our bodies. And 70% of these sink to the bottom of the ocean where we can't reach them. Despite industries, companies, and governments trying to make differences by imposing policies, the corruption of parties involved, nothing truly gets done as they simply buy themselves out of obligation. Capitalism seems to be perpetuating the amount of plastic circulating globally. There is a need to redefine our relationship with the material and with corporations' control in politics. Last and never least, it's number 1, the Caribbean space whistle. A remarkable phenomena floats up from the Caribbean Sea well past the clouds all the way up to space. Covering over 2 million square kilometers, the Caribbean Sea is part of the Atlantic but bounded in by the South and Central America as well as its own Caribbean isles. Researchers studied how this affects the sea levels and pressure, taking readings from the bottom of the sea using 4 different models of ocean activity from 1958 to 2013. What they found was the Rossby whistle, caused by a Rossby wave, which propagates from the west and interacts with the seafloor, forcing it to die on the west and rebound on the east side. Only waves of particular lengths can survive this process without canceling themselves out. Successful waves produce an oscillation with a sharply defined period. As a result, water sloshes in and out of the basin every 120 days, while this whistle plays a note of A flat, although it is many octaves below the audible range. Professor Chris Hughes, an expert in sea level science at the university, said we can compare the ocean activity in the Caribbean Sea to that of a real whistle. When you blow into a whistle, the jet of air becomes unstable and excites the resonant sound waves which fits in the whistle cavity. Because the whistle is open, the sound radiates out so you can hear it. This phenomena can vary the sea level by as much as 10 centimeters along the Colombian and Venezuelan coast, so understanding it can help predict the likelihood of coastal flooding. Starting with a literal ghost story, Love Run Aground. The ship's only crime was having a name too ironic for the story. It was the day before Valentine's Day, 1748, and the Lady Lovibond was set to sail to Portugal as a celebration of the captain Simon Reed's wedding, and also run a few errands to boot. The captain's first mate and bestie, John Rivers, was either in love with the bride or in love with the captain and gets all jealous, ragey, and is the sole member who has an issue with the whole thing. So, out of vengeance, he crashes the entire ship into the notorious Goodwin Sands, sinking it and killing all on board. At least that's the consensus. Whatever happened or how nobody survived the crash, it's said that at least 50,000 people have actually lost their lives on the sandbank that is dubbed a ship graveyard. Since that fateful night, the Lady Lovibond could be seen every 50 years sailing around Kent. 1798, 1848, and 1948 all had numerous witness sightings. The captain of the Edenbridge reported that he nearly collided with a 3-masted vessel off the Goodwin Sands, and the captain of a smaller fishing schooner reported the same, but no wreckage nor survivors are ever found when sent. 50 years later, local residents in Kent saw a ship with 3 masts headed on a collision course with the Goodwin Sands, but again, rescue ships found nothing. And next, while searching for a Swedish spy plane wreck, researchers stumble upon an accidental boat discovery. The ship was found in 2003, and the full-scale archaeological expedition to actually study it was launched in 2010. Throughout the investigation of the ghost ship, they've been able to establish that the ghost ship was from the 17th century AD, perhaps around 1650. It was a merchant ship, and the ship style was a flete, which was developed by the Dutch towards the end of the 16th century. Nevertheless, other questions remain, such as the identity of the ship, the flag under which it sailed, and the cause of its sinking. The ghost ship was just one of the many shipwrecks that have been preserved in the Baltic Sea. This sea covers an area about 400,000 square kilometers, and according to some estimates, contains as many as 100,000 shipwrecks, most of which are remarkably well preserved due to the lack of salinity in the water. No presence of shipworms, which would normally eat away at wrecks, and there's also no tidal movements. Mix those together and shake, you got some gift-wrapped shipwrecks waiting for you down there. Oh, and by the way, they did find the Swedish spy plane that vanished in 1952, so double mission success. This next ship washed up in India after being adrift for 9 years. Lost somewhere in the Pacific Ocean in 2009, Samratulangi PB 1600 was last seen off Taiwan's coast as it sailed away before contact with the ship is lost. As was it, until suddenly reappearing in the south of Myanmar in the Indian Ocean on August 30th of 2018. It was reported by some fishermen from a Myanmar's village nearby when the giant thing ran itself aground on a sandbar. The fishermen, not fearing death or the spookies, entered the ghost ship and found nothing aboard. When the coastal police and the Navy pulled up, everyone inspected the ship and had no clue where it came from, but suspected being towed by another ship after 2 cables were found at its head. Well, howdy doody, they got their answer as to how this jumbo ship made it all the way to Myanmar. While a literal tugboat, one called the Independence, found by police 50 miles off the coast, coast, and after questioning the 13 Indonesian crew members on board, authorities learned the tugboat had been towing the vessel since the 13th of August and intended to take it to a factory in Bangladesh that would dismantle and salvage the ship. However, some of the cables attached broke during bad weather and they decided to abandon it. However, there has been no explanation as to how the ship that was last spotted in 2009 off Taiwan's coast ended up in the Chittagong shipwrecking factory arena. When asked where they found it, the fishermen simply said, adrift. In the 2000s, many unexpected boats and vessels have been found in Asian waters, a famous case being the 12 wooden boats. Over October, November, and December of 2015, at least 12 wooden boats were found adrift or run aground carrying everyone's favorite type of cargo, the decaying bodies of 22 some odd people. 2 of the people were found without heads, and 1 boat contained just 6 loose skulls. Since the first boat was found in October, a series seemed to flock after it like the setup of a Stephen King novel. The consensus for these ghost ships is that they were likely defecting from North Korea. 1 boat's hull was embossed with the Korean People's Army, and another had a tattered scrap which looked like it was part of the North Korean national flag. The boats are made of wood and they're old and heavy, they can't travel very fast, and they have next to no protection from the elements, and the engines are not powerful enough to turn the ships against current. Combined with defectors being forced to take a more dangerous route across the East Sea, as now crossing the border into China is considerably harder, these boats showing up as a fleet of death didn't actually shock officials. Then, in 2017, again, 4 separate ships washed up on Japan's west coast, full of bodies again from North Korea. Turo Miyamoto, a professor and expert on North Korea, explained a reason other than defection for the number of ships washing up ashore, which has risen since 2013. It's after Kim Jong-un decided to expand the fishery industry as a way to increase revenue for the military. They're using old boats manned by the military by people who have no knowledge of fishing, Miyamoto said. It will continue to happen. This next ship on our count is a UNESCO heritage find, because it's all coral reef. This wreck was originally reported in the late 1990s by a local fisherman and professional diver, Manuel Polanco, who had discovered the ship on the Banco Chinchorro Reef. The wreck was explored by divers from Mexico's National Archaeological Institute for the first time in 2010, after which it was named the Manuel Polanco in the finder's honor. The Banco Chinchorro is one of the largest coral atoll in the northern hemisphere, and this singular reef has wrecked so many ships it's now known to mariners as the Dream Catcher, Sleep Depriver, and Nightmare Reef. A total of 70 wrecks have been recovered here, and with so many lives having been lost at the location, the reef is now a UNESCO underwater heritage site. The divers who explored the Manuel discovered metallic artifacts including iron ingots, probably used for the ballast, an 8-foot cannon, and an anchor. Samples from the wreck's wooden hull dated back to around the 18th or early 19th century, and the researchers said it was the design of the ship's anchor, known as the Admiralty pattern, that suggested this is a British ship. Furthermore, evidence suggests the anchor was live when the ship ran aground, and this means the crew had dropped the anchor while the ship was in motion. Why? The archaeologists said the anchor was probably activated in a desperate attempt to halt the ship's progress onto the reef, but apparently too late. Well, if there's one thing we can say is that the lifeboat lived. The passenger steamer SS Valentia had a varied history of carrying passengers, cargo, and troops. After 20 years at sea, it was sold and launched as a second-class passenger steamer, running routes out of San Fran. It was in late January on one of these excursions in 1906 during a horrible storm, the Valentia struck a reef and the ship quickly started taking on water. To avoid sinking, the captain ordered it be beached since they weren't far, but they again hit the rocks and the ship starts getting tossed around. People are in a panic, so the lifeboats are launched against the captain's orders, and almost all were immediately failures as a result. 3 flipped on descent, 3 more capsized after reaching water, and the last one has disappeared under the waves. The ship was carrying 108 passengers and only 37 are eventually rescued. The ship itself became a subject of ghost stories from that day forward. In 1910, the Seattle Times reported sightings of a phantom ship that resembled the Valentia adrift in the sea. Other reports from fishermen around British Columbia told the story of a lifeboat manned entirely by skeletons. But stranger still, in 1933, the Valentia's No. 5 lifeboat is found empty in Barkley Sound. Even after years of exposure to harsh oceanic elements, the lifeboat is completely untouched and unharmed. Part of it is now on display at the Maritime Museum of British Columbia. We have to put a celebrity cameo, obviously, so here's the Mary Celeste. Canadian pride right there. If we do anything right, it's ghost ships. On December 4th of 1872, a ship now known as the Mary Celeste was found adrift in the Atlantic. The ship was in full sail and in seaworthy condition, but when it's boarded, it's found to be completely empty. Meanwhile, a month prior, on November 7th, the Mary Celeste left New York Harbor hauling 1,701 barrels of poisonous denatured alcohol as cargo and a crew of approximately 10 people. What happened in the 1 month before the British Delegacia found the Mary Celeste less, sailing aimlessly between Azores and Portugal. Upon closer inspection, the last entry in the ship's daily log was written on November 24th. There was still water and supplies for 6 months, and even smoking pipes laid out on the tables. Worse, the ship's single lifeboat, as well as her chronometer and sextant, are missing. The main halyard rope, 3 inches in circumference, is found broken and hanging over the side of the ship. From these bits of evidence, a possible scenario pieced by historians goes as follows. Something occurred on the Mary Celeste that made the captain panic, and he ordered the crew to get in the lifeboat and abandon the ship. The halyard was then used to tie to the lifeboat, and the captain and his crew trailed behind the Mary Celeste to see what would happen. The panic turned out to be false alarm, but unfortunately for Captain Briggs and his family and the crew, the halyard snapped during a raging storm and they were unable to get back on the Mary Celeste. This next ship is also pretty well known and may have fallen victim to potential pirates. Like a Flying Dutchman, the 5-masted schooner Carroll A. Deering loomed through the mists about Diamond Shoals today, all sails set but unmanned. That quote was published on the heading of the Washington Herald, February 3rd of 1921. Unlike many on this list, the 10-man crew successfully made it to their destination of Rio de Janeiro in 1920 despite needing to change captains when the original one got sick. But it's on the way back in January of 1921 something strange happened. On January 29th, the Deering passed by the Cape Lookout lightship. Someone who apparently did not look or act like a crewman shouted across the water that they had lost both anchors. Otherwise, there's no sign of distress. Although the witness says the crew was milling about in a suspicious manner. The following day, the ship passed the SS Lake Elon southwest of the Diamond Shoals lightship at approximately 5:45 p.m. The Deering seemed to be steering at a really strange erratic course. The ship was still in good condition when it was spotted for the last time from Cape Hatteras on January 31st of 1921, before it was found shredded on the Diamond Shoals. When the Coast Guard arrived to the scene of Carroll's wreck, the sails were set, food had been prepared, and plates put out, but all untouched, and everything else seemed in order. The lifeboats were gone, and there was no sign of the men who had been on board. This next ghost ship made it to its desired location, carrying a frozen corpse crew with it. The famous Octavius was built during the mid-18th century and departed England to China in 1761. They left the port with the full crew of 28, the skipper and his wife and son. They arrived safely in China, unloaded their cargo before heading back to sea when she was loaded with new goods destined for Britain. Weather was warm, the captain was feeling confident, so he decided to sail home via the Northwest Passage, a voyage that had not been accomplished in 1762. This is the last that anyone heard of the vessel, her crew, or cargo. Fast forward to October 11th of 1775, and a whaling ship called the Herald discovers the Octavius stuck off the coast mounted on ice. They boarded the tattered ship and looked for booty, dead or alive. Breaking into the ship's hatch so they could descend below deck, the Herald's crew meets a terrifying set. The entire 28-man crew was frozen to death in their quarters. In the captain's cabin, they found the captain still seated at his desk with the ship's logbook in front of him. The Herald's crew, as superstitious sailors, had curse alarm bells going off and got out of there. They grabbed the ship's log on the way and they lose the middle pages of the logbook. So when they're back on the Herald, they just have the first and the last few, which are enough to piece together the basics. The captain of the Octavius had tried to navigate the Northwest Passage, but his ship had become imprisoned in the ice of the Arctic and the entire crew perished. The ship's last recorded position was 75N 160W, which placed Octavius 250 miles north of Barrow, Alaska. As Octavius had been found off the coast of Greenland by the Herald crew, that means it must have broken loose from the ice at some stage and completed its voyage through the passage carrying a frozen crew. The abandoned ship, though, was never seen again. And now, a horror movie classic is the I Die. In 1940s, the story of a strange ship called the SS Orang Medan began circling in the newspapers around the world. The ship reportedly blown near Indonesia, and its entire crew had died under mysterious circumstances beforehand. It goes that in June of 1947, an officer aboard the British vessel the Silver Star picked up a mysterious, unsettling distress signal from the Medan. Through crackles, a man said, "We float. All officers, including captain, dead lying in chart room and bridge. Possibly whole crew dead." Silence crackled along the line, and then, to tack on one more horrific little detail, one sentence breaks through. I die. The message was picked up by several other ships in the area. Silver Star was the first ship to make it to the source. The Dutch freighter is found floating adrift in the Straits of Malacca, and the Star's officer and crew boarded only to find bodies strewn around the deck. Their faces are frozen, teeth bared, with their upturned faces to the sun, staring as if in fear. Even the ship's dog is found this way, but there's no sign of injury or attack. Before any further investigation can be done, even preparation to tow the vessel, the crew of the Silver Star smoked smoke and quickly abandoned ship as they boarded their own vessel and cut ties to the Orang and sailed away. Within seconds, the other ship exploded, leaving only empty water and debris. To this day, no one knows what happened aboard the Orang Medan in the seconds before the Silver Star crew arrived. As far as anyone knows, the ship itself slew the captain, passengers, and crew.